And now, in studio, bringing his Midwest values from the Show Me State to the land of San Diego. He's a triple threat, licensed as an attorney, mortgage broker, and a top producing realtor who's crushing the competition. Here to deliver you what's happening in the trenches of the market. Your host, Michael Gaddis.
Thank you for listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am your host, Michael Gaddis of michaelgaddis.com and frontierloangroup.com. I am here every Wednesday at 8 p.m. discussing anything and everything related to real estate. If any of you would like to communicate with me and send me an email, you can do so at michael@frontierloangroup.com or michael@michaelgaddis.com. Last week I was not here. As many of you know, they probably played a replay of one of my previous shows. And I want to kind of share the reasons why I was not here last week. I know over the course of the last, I'd say month and a half to 2 months, I've had several estate planning attorneys on the show talking about the importance of putting your estate together, and I've had elder law attorneys talking about, the importance of dealing with the possibilities of incapacitation. I've had a lot of different speakers on here talking about all of these things. So I want to tell you a little story about what happened to me and where I was. I would say 2 weeks ago I was advised that my aunt, who I'm very close to, would not be allowed to have a third liver transplant. She has had 2 previous liver transplants, and they told her that because of her age and a bunch of factors that she would not be put on the list for a third liver transplant, which essentially gave her anywhere between 3 weeks and 6 months to live. So that, and just so you know, she had a cirrhosis of the liver that's not caused by alcoholism. It's a rare type of cirrhosis. So she's not one of those people who went out and drank, and then got cirrhosis of the liver. So that was very disconcerting to me. Obviously, that somebody I love very much has been given that type of news. In the meantime, my father, who lives in Florida, his longtime 14-year live-in girlfriend had passed away very quickly from brain cancer. She passed away on December 2nd. And she had told me before she passed away that my father was showing signs of dementia, that he was having trouble remembering things, that he was repeating himself numerous times, and she was concerned about it. Unfortunately for her, she had much greater issues going on in her own life. However, about 2 weeks ago, right when at the same time I found out about my aunt, I found out that my father was in the hospital. He had, I guess, wandered out of the house and was wandering for days, and they found him on the street, and he didn't know, he was very incapacitated, let's just say. So he was being hospitalized. So I had to make plans to fly to Kansas City, Missouri, where my aunt is, to see her, and then from Kansas City fly to Florida. I had to fly into Fort Lauderdale, and then drive across Florida to Cape Coral and Fort Myers to see my father. So I went to see my aunt, and and that was touching, as you might expect. And then I had to fly to. So when I got to Florida, this is where the importance of estate planning and getting your life in order comes into play. My father, who was kind of on his own for a very long time, had no plans at all, nothing. So when his live-in girlfriend passed away, basically leaving him alone to take care of himself, and with his dementia, there was no preparation for that. He didn't know how to take care of himself anymore. There was basically nobody there to take care of him. And I guess the extent of his dementia was a lot worse than what I had been told. And so when I went to his house, which was vacant because he was in the hospital, I walked into the house, and the house had been basically gutted by his ex-girlfriend, or his girlfriend who passed away's daughter. She had sold all the furniture, all the TVs, everything. It looked like somebody had come in there and basically, burglars had come in and just burglarized the entire house. The only thing that was left was a bunch of paperwork and, family heirloom stuff and a garage full of junk and 5 dogs who were living in this house. So when I opened up the door, the smell was just incredible. And looking at me were the faces of 5 very sad-looking dogs. Now, apparently, the girlfriend's daughter had been, having somebody, or she or somebody had been coming over and feeding the dogs and letting them out maybe once a day or so. But obviously, you can imagine 5 dogs living in a house by themselves for extended periods of time is not a good idea. So I walked in there, and the feeling in the house was just depressed. Obviously, there was papers and things strewn all over the place, and 5 dogs looking at me very sadly. They were actually very excited to see me, so you could tell that they needed human interaction, but it was still very sad. So I didn't really have the heart to tell my father when I saw him, because I had not seen him yet, the condition of his house. So I went to the hospital, and I saw him, and I could tell immediately that, he recognized me, and my sister had met me down there, and she went as well, and he had a little trouble remembering her name, which was definitely disconcerting. So I talked to the doctors and the hospital facility, and they basically had told me that there's no way he can live on his own. That basically he's going to need some sort of assistance for the rest of his life. And they asked me if we had a power of attorney for him, and we obviously did not. My father did not put a trust together. He did not have a will. He did not have a durable power of attorney. He did not have a living will. He had nothing. So here I am trying to figure out a man's life without any authority whatsoever. So we had to get a local attorney over there to help us, get some paperwork in order so that we could try to basically, get in touch with his, his car, because he couldn't drive his car anymore. So we had to try to turn in his car, turn off his, dish network, turn off his, just cancel his credit card. I mean, it's a whole life that you have to deal with, and it was spread everywhere. We had to get, we didn't even know how much money he was getting. It was really, really one of the most stressful things I think I have ever encountered. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170 The Answer. I am Michael Gaddis, your host of MichaelGaddis.com and FrontierLoanGroup.com, and I'm continuing my story about what happened to me last week and the need for preparing for incapacity, let's say. So, I'm sitting here with my sister looking at this house, figuring out what to do with this house, figuring out what to do with my father, figuring out what to do with everything, and all I kept hearing were the words of those estate planning attorneys and elder law attorneys that we had had on our show. You need to plan. You need to plan. And it just kept ringing through my head. And as I felt overwhelmed, I felt like the weight of the world was falling on me, and I didn't know what to do because there's just so much. I mean, I tried to drive his car over to the Kia, he has a Kia, and he tried to drive it over to the local Kia dealership just to turn it in, and they wouldn't take it until I talked to Kia Finance, and I said, well, I live 3,000 miles away, so I don't know where to secure the car so it's safe, and they said, well, that's kind of not our problem. So, I mean, this is the type of stuff that we had to deal with. Thankfully, we were able to get the power of attorneys in order and the living will, and we were able to get the hospital kind of on a plan of how to relocate him. And I just think that the reason I'm telling you this is because from my own heart, I tell you that you really, really need to get some sort of planning together. Nobody knows when tragedy is going to strike. Nobody knows when someone might become incapacitated. And for the sake of yourself and for the sake of those that have to take care of you or deal with the situation, please, please consider doing some sort of estate planning or something so that whenever that, if in the hopefully it never happens, but in the event that something like that does happen, that it can go a lot smoother than what I was just faced with. And it's really sad and it's hard because he's 3,000 miles away. And we're in the process, just so you know, trying to move him near my sister who lives in Illinois. But the whole point is, I just want to tell you that it is really, really important that you do consider those types of things, and that when I do have these types of guests on air, it's not, I'm not doing it because I have a purpose other than I want to educate people as to how to make their lives easier, and maybe have you think about things that you probably normally wouldn't think about. And if you take nothing else from this show, just remember, kind of what I walked into with my father, and don't let that happen to you and your children, because it is stressful, and I'm still dealing with the after effects of it, and I'm, trying to get everything in order, and in addition to running my own life, and in addition to dealing with the stress of my aunt. So it is a lot going on, and I apologize for missing last week, but I think I do have a pretty good excuse for not being here. So anyway, after the break, we're going to talk about 8 ways to improve the value of your home. You're listening to the Michael Gaddis Show on AM 1170, The Answer.